Greetings, Gothamites! Welcome back to my channel. I am the Crowlector, and today we're going to be taking a look at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Batman Begins Batman and Demon Batman. Ooh, spooky. How much begin must a Batman begin before a Batman can begin beginning? Well, let's find out. Now these guys are part of the latest wave that's just now beginning to hit stores, along with Scarecrow from Batman Begins and the Michael Keaton Batman from the '89 movie. Now keep in mind, while Batman here is a wide release, the Demon Batman is a gold label that's exclusive to Target, so he might be a little bit tougher for you to find. Can you guys believe it has been almost 20 years since Batman Begins was released in theaters? I must have been sprayed by the fear toxin, because talk about scary. As someone who grew up in the 90s, my first exposure to Batman was the '66 series and the animated series. I used to run around the house wearing my Batman onesie, and I never wanted to take that thing off. Movie-wise, my first exposure were the Schumacher films, which are good for a kid, but as you get older, you want something a little more dark and angsty, and this looked right up my alley. I wasn't even a teenager yet, but I'd already begun that prepubescent journey and was ready to give up those quote-unquote childish superheroes. Joke was on me, of course. I still remember the hype around this movie. Seeing the trailers with Hans Zimmer's amazing score, even that cringe-worthy Nickelback promo. Do you guys remember that one? My family didn't really have a whole lot of money back then, but my mom took me to see the film on its last day in theaters, and man, I was hooked. Not only did Batman Begins awaken my love for Scarecrow, but it was also my gateway into a darker, more adult side of superheroes. Looking back now, it's not quite as dark as I remember. I'm sure WB wanted something darker for the first Batman movie after Batman and Robin, but not quite as dark as Batman Returns was, where it would deter families from taking their kids. And while I have grown, admittedly, a little bit tired of the realistic Batman, at the time, Christopher Nolan's more grounded take was a bit of a revelation, really. Removing those more schlocky comic book tropes for the grounded realism was a great move. Batman has always been the most human of all the heroes, and showing the practicality of it was quite smart. Stepping into the cowl this time around is obviously Christian Bale. Most people seem to love his take on Bruce, but the Batman voice has always been a bit divisive. Personally, I kinda like it, even if it is also a bit silly at times, but who among us has not tried to do that gravelly Batman voice at least once? Come on, admit it. Actually, come to think of it, between Batman, the Joker, and Bane, the Nolanverse in general has some really unique voices that people love to emulate. It didn't really start becoming the meme that it is today until The Dark Knight, which I think is partially because they just hadn't perfected it yet, but also because Begins in general is still the most quote-unquote comic booky of the Nolan trilogy. And of course, with a new Batman comes a new bat suit. The Begin suit only lasted about 1.2-ish movies because of the impracticality of it. Between this and the Dark Knight suit here, I'm not quite sure which I like more. The Dark Knight suit is obviously a lot more tactical and practical for agility and movement, but the Begin suit is a little bit thicker, more armor-like. Definitely something that a younger, more inexperienced Batman would want. And I love that you can kind of trace the progression of it from that base jumping suit he has at the beginning of the movie all the way to this final suit. It's not as rubbery as those Schumacher bat suits, and not as thin as the '66 Batman. It's a nice, practical, realistic bat suit. And this multiverse figure, I think, captures the look pretty well. It's not quite as thick as that NECA figure, which I do actually have around here somewhere. I can't find it, so maybe he's off on a mission, maybe hunting Catwoman. If you happen to see any floating cat hair pass through the screen, just ignore that. But anyway, this figure is a far cry from those original Begins figures that we got way back in the day, where the normal figure was actually a little thin, maybe a little more akin to the Dark Knight suit, funnily enough. One of the coolest things I think about the Begin suit is this cape. How it's often draped over him very dramatically. It's almost really like a character in and of itself. And Todd did a good job with that here. Just like in his comics, he made the cape very big, very dramatic. Not quite as dramatic as in the film, but close. Now, I'm not always the biggest fan of these wired capes. I do like them. And I think, they oftentimes work better than the plastic capes, at least in terms of character and display ability, if you will. But sometimes the bendy wires can get a little warped, at least on mine, and kind of throw off that look. I do think including the cloth cape here was a good idea. It really adds to that dynamic posing for someone who, is much more skilled at posing figures than I am, admittedly. I do wish it was a smidge bigger, or there was some sort of like swappable cape where you could really drape it over him. The Demon Batman here uses the exact same cape as the regular one, which is a bit of a bummer. I don't think we ever see his cape in the movie, but on some of the previous figures, his cape was torn and tattered, which really helped add to that dirty, demonic look. This cape, as you can see, doesn't even get a wash. It's clean and shiny, just like the regular one. I suppose it would be easy enough to cut up in places myself, but I'm no customizer, and I don't want to accidentally ruin the cape. Now, some fans have noted the lack of accuracy in the cowl here. This cowl does definitely skew a little closer to the Dark Knight suit. In fact, it may just be a straight-up reuse of that figure. Begins on the left here, Dark Knight on the right. It is certainly slimmer than it was on the Begin suit, this head sculpt here. That said, I don't necessarily mind it. In the movie, obviously, he can't move his neck at all because of the material of the suit, which, when translated to figure form, I think would only hinder the articulation. I guess they could have always done what NECA did and made that cowl and neck piece one single piece. But I do like that we actually get this separate movement here. I'm willing to compromise a little bit of accuracy for a little bit more potential. One inaccuracy that is a bit of a bummer, though, is the Demon Batman. The only new thing about this guy is the head. There's a small bit of wash on the armor up and down his body, but the design itself in the movie is a lot more dirty and cracked and uneven, especially along the bat signal here. This does not give that look. This just looks a little more dirty and scuffed up. So far, the only companies to give us that more accurate look are Mafex and Hot Toys, the more deluxe companies. Actually, I just remembered, Funko actually recently gave us a Demon Batman figure, and it did include the proper detail. I don't know how well you can make it out because of the shadow, but you can barely see like a bit of a pebbling effect on the cape and the bat insignia. Very nice Funko, especially on such a small figure. They also managed to work in the black ooze along his mouth and his eyes. They even gave us that little farty gas cloud there, which is cute. Something that no other figures have done so far for Demon Batman. It's not the biggest deal, ultimately, but, this is a gold label, which are supposed to be a slight step up in terms of deluxeness. So even just a different chest piece with some of that wrought that we get here would have really added to the look. Accessory-wise, you've got your McFarlane staples. You got your stand here, your trading card with some nice Begins art on it, and a bio on the back. Pause it if you want to read it. I do like that this one is actually tailored to the Batman Begins Batman, unlike the Batman Begins Scarecrow that we got, which was more of a basic Scarecrow bio, but I digress. He also comes with a single large Batarang and his Bat Grapple, both in that nice shiny gold, and some swappable hands. This time, we got the really cool triple Batarang hand, almost like a Wolverine claw, if you will, which I really, really love. This is a good example, I think, of a fun, unique accessory that's thinking outside the box a little bit. And then we also get this left hand here, which I don't know how well you can see, but it's holding, I think, one of those little bomb thingies he throws in Arkham Asylum to break open that wall. It's a fun accessory, but because the bat bomb is also black and on the smaller side, it really kind of blends in too much, and it looks a little bit too much just like the closed fist hand that he comes with. I think I would have liked a trigger hand for the left hand, or maybe some claws or open hands for Demon Batman. Which brings me to today's edition of Nerdy Nitpicks. As always, a nerdy nitpick is anything that bothers me that would not necessarily bother your average collector or any normal person, if such a person exists. But I have a feeling that today's nitpick is one that isn't just limited to me, and that is including hands and accessories that aren't compatible with one another. In this day and age, we get a lot of swappable parts, which is nice, but so often do we get accessories that can only be held in one hand, or reused hands that can't properly hold an accessory, like including a pew-pew weapon, but not a hand with a trigger finger. Now, I get it. Plastic is money, so not every company can make mirrored versions of every hand, and some characters, of course, are either right-handed or left-handed, but it does limit the display possibilities. This Batman, for instance, is holding that triple Batarang in his right hand, which I love, but for his left hand, he only has that closed fist and this little sticky bomb. No gripping hand for something like the Batarang or the Bat Grapple. And sure, maybe Batman is right-handed, but how cool would this look with the triple Batarang and the Bat Grapple in the other? Batman is nothing if not resourceful. You can't tell me he wouldn't improvise and use his less dominant hand if it called for it. Ultimately, Demon Batman doesn't really need anything other than to look ooky spooky. He never uses anything in the movie, so just give him some clawed hands or something. I like that they included the accessories, but it's not necessary. And while I'm on my nitpicks, I might as well just call out the swappable hand thing in general. I don't necessarily consider extra hands to be an accessory per se. They're nice to get, of course, but ultimately they're technically just an extension of the figure's body, not an extra. Take, for instance, the recent release of the new Batman Adventures Scarecrow. All he came with was extra hands, despite the original release coming with more. Not only that, but he's shown on the box with his staff and accessories. So McFarlane gave him a bunch of hands to hold things that he doesn't even come with. And don't get me wrong, I'd rather have extra hands than no hands at all. See, look, he can't even bear the thought of it. But sometimes it feels like they're just taking the easy way out. I'm sure I can find an extra black hand around here somewhere from another Batman figure that goes well with this one enough, but that's not the point. I know I'm being overly dramatic, but that's why it's a nerdy nitpick. Whew, okay. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to articulation. He's definitely a lot more mobile than the movie. He's got that ball-jointed head here, doing a little Batusi. He's got those butterfly shoulders. Got a double elbow, so he can, do bat karaoke. He can tell secrets, beatbox, what have you. He's got those swivel hands here. An ab crunch. A nice T crotch. Sounds weird to say, but you know what I mean. Which also actually uses, excuse me for touching your bat berries there, Batman, but it's using a thicker plastic on the crotch piece than the soft rubber diaper we've gotten before. Look at those bat buns. He's also got double knees, an ankle cut, and a toe cut. You can definitely get this guy in some really nice action-y poses. Paint-wise, he's pretty crisp and clean. But then again, there's really not much paint to him. Even less on Demon Batman here. He's mostly black with those little pops of tan and gold. I do like the gold utility belt on the Nolanverse Batman. It really adds a nice splash of color to an otherwise monotone suit. All in all, these guys are nice figures, and of course, a crucial inclusion for the Nolanverse figures. A few big inaccuracies and some cut corners, but your mileage will vary on how much that bothers you. Now, we are getting pretty close to a full Nolanverse roster. The only villains we're missing are the Liam Neeson Roz, Talia, and the Roz decoy. I think a nurse Joker could be a lot of fun, or maybe some more of the bank robbers. Hero-wise, we still need Gordon, Alfred, maybe regular Harvey Dent, which I'm surprised they didn't do as like a platinum version. I could see them doing a Rachel, maybe. And then, of course, a regular suited Bruce Wayne, with the unmasked head that we got on the Dark Knight version, and one of the now many suited bodies out there. I'd say it's really just a matter of time, but if all else fails, you could always make a quick custom or a kit bash for him. Who would you like to see next? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, go ahead and like and subscribe, and hit that little bell icon, the little bat in the belfry, if you will, to be notified when I post new videos. Thanks for watching, Gothamites, and don't forget, stay spooky! That was a terrible Batman.